Evening, everybody. Welcome to the latest episode of the Iarmhi TV Club Podcast. I think we're on episode 7, 8. Very good. How time flies when you're enjoying yourself. Tonight, I'm joined by, on my left-hand side, Damien Maher, sports editor of Westmeath Examiner, and on my right, Paul Ahern. Paul, I'm going to start with you, we'll break the ice and such like that. I know you're involved with the Institute in Dublin, Sports Institute. Give us an idea, you're a sports psychologist, give us an idea of some of the work you're doing up there, or what's involved with it for you, who are you dealing with, any high profile names that you'd like to name drop for us here on this?
I won't do any name dropping.
Okay, all right.
But the Institute, literally what it does is it provides sports science support to anyone who's a carded athlete or a recognised athlete in Ireland, so across all sports, apart from, say, Gaelic games and rugby and soccer. So literally anything you see in the Olympics is really where those athletes are, and from a psychology point of view, the way we organise ourselves, we support different sports. So you might have somebody who's working with ladies hockey, somebody who's working with boxing, rowing, athletics, from that point of view. And really you're working with individuals in terms of just helping them develop their mental approach to their performance, how they prepare, how they focus in their performance, how they review their performance afterwards.
Now, when you're talking about these athletes, just for anyone that might know, these are all the people that are on sports grants as such from Sports Ireland, which can range from 5 to 50,000 or something like that.
Yeah.
Is that
I suppose just to kind of, not saying they're people I've worked with, but like you're talking about a Kelly Harrington or Rashida Adeleke or a Paul O'Donovan in rowing, those type of athletes. And when they're carded, that means they're carded on an annual basis depending on their performances really, and that determines how much grant money they get from the government. And that goes towards their living costs, their travel and so on and so forth. So it's not like, for some of them, you could be on 20,000 a year and it sounds nice, but in reality you're funding your travel, your food, your accommodation, all that sort of piece out of it. A lot of them are relying heavily on sponsorship and family support and so on to do that. So it's, while they're professional athletes and getting a certain amount of money, it's fairly hard going for them on that side.
And Paul, are they all in Ireland now, all these, or would you have any dealings with your Rashida Adeleke who's based over in the University of Texas or whatever?
So for athletes who aren't based in Ireland, it kind of depends really in terms of where they are in their competition cycle. So, where they might be based. So like coming up to the Worlds, for example, the World Athletics Championships are starting in a couple of weeks. You would have the athletic sports psychologist would be over there with that team, and there would be certain athletes that they would be working with. But also in their prep, and if they're remote or training, you just kind of figure out how that works. They're not necessarily all in the building. World Boxing's on next week in Liverpool. I think it's next week in Liverpool, and there'll be somebody who'll be working with them from that point of view.
So interesting.
Yeah, no, very varied. It's certainly.
Is it full-time post?
Yeah, I'm pretty much up there like three to 4 days a week. It varies according to the cycle. So sometimes, like say earlier this summer, it would have been quite quiet just in terms of where competitions were and so on, and you're coming off an Olympic year. But yeah, no, really, really interesting. I mean, you do have to pinch yourself, when you're kind of sitting there having a cup of coffee and getting yourself sorted for the day, and Charlie Mausley or somebody like that walks by in the building kind of on her way to a physio appointment or a gym or something like that. But the resources they have there are absolutely fantastic. Like they've got an indoor sprint track which is set up for kind of measuring speed and biomechanics. They've heat chambers. The boxers have a whole set up there with 5 different rings. Is this
all in Abbottstown?
That's all in Abbottstown.
Right.
So, if you go beyond, say, where everyone would know where the GA pitches are, and then there's the indoor arena further down, if you turn right, then there's a whole rugby set up, the FAI are there, and then go beyond that again, the Institute's up there, so it's up the back. It's kind of near where they're hoping to build a new velodrome. That's kind of what the next stage of development. That's a fantastic facility, yeah.
And in terms of the sports psychology side of things, you're working with individuals, but when you take that back to a team scenario, how can you benefit? a team, we'll say?
Yeah, it's kind of like the way I kind of like to describe it in a team environment is like 4 boxes. So you're dealing with individuals about how they handle themselves mentally on the pitch and off the pitch. And with teams, it's how do the teams work on the pitch and off the pitch. So like off the pitch is how you kind of develop I suppose a sense of identity and cohesiveness in terms of how fellas want to work together, how ladies want to work together in a team environment. On the pitch, you're working on things in terms of communication, how they focus, how they react to situations that go well, how they react to situations that don't go well. So essentially what, like in simple terms with like hurling or football, for example, what usually happens when a team concedes a goal, how quickly do they move on from that and focus on getting into the ball that's on at the moment rather than dragging it with them. And that can be a collective thing or it can be also an individual thing. So like, typical one, keeper lets the ball drop in over his head, bad mistake, goal. Yeah. For the next 5 minutes, is he thinking about organising his defence and being set up for the next kick out or puck out or whatever, or is there some little part in the back of his head thinking about, I'm after letting the boys down, and then suddenly another kick out goes astray, and what happens after that? So it's about how really, in a game scenario, it's really about how do you manage your emotions, how do you manage your concentration.
And particularly now, of course, with the new rules and the kick out's a contest, so crucial.
Yeah, it's massive. Like, I mean, I'm smiling, I'm sure we'll talk about it, but like, if you think about just how do you make decisions under pressure, like if you look at the Shamrocks Kinnegad game in the second half, there was kick out after kick out after kick out after kick out being lost, and there was no decisions being made to change, and then there was one short one which didn't go well, and then there was another number of mistakes then by defenders all around it, and that just kind of, what you're trying to do is give players the skills to be able to not let those situations impact them negatively, that they can continue to perform.
So I suppose in kind of old layman's terms, don't drop the head. Body language has to be good, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, like I mean, there's lots of different things that go around it. I mean, the way I always say it is, are you playing the game that's right in front of you, or you're playing things that happened 5 minutes ago, or you're playing the things that you think might like to happen in 5 minutes? It's the minute you're in that matters, and everything else really doesn't matter. You can worry about them afterwards.
Yeah. Interesting,
Yeah, and like at this stage, Paul, probably every inter-county team has some involvement with a sports psychologist.
Yeah, and like, look,
I know you're involved with one of the top senior teams, hurling teams as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty commonplace now. Like, it's funny, Dan Carter wrote a thing in his book in terms of, like, years ago, it was like, if you had a problem, you were sent off to see the sports psychologist because somebody thought you were a bit mad. And he was saying, well, now you're mad if you don't see a sports psychologist, because it's really, the description I tend to use is, like, if you're playing hurling or you're playing football, there's skills of the game: the block, the hook, the tackle, the pick up, kicking with the left, kicking with the right, the hand pass. They're all skills of the game that we all practiced in, out, over, back, over and over again. How you handle yourself upstairs is just a skill. And if you can know the skill and learn the skill and practice the skill, then you'll get better at it. And it's just a different skill. I'd always go, it's not a big mystery. It's, there's a lot of science behind it and a lot of proven science behind it. But it's really about, to your point, Damien, how do you put it in terms and help people understand it in a way that they can utilise it. And different sports psychs will do it differently and in different ways. I've got my style in terms of how I like to try and approach that. Different people do it different ways.
Paul, is there a huge difference between professional athletes and taking it back to an amateur GA player? Or are we? No. Is the gap narrowing, or?
Like I think there's two biggest differences in the GA. Most fellas have jobs or college, so they train as hard. The effort that they put in and the preparation that they put in is on a par with professional athletes. The big difference for me is recovery. So, an athlete, if you take the boxers, for example, they might come in and do 2.5, 3 hours in the gym. Now, it's not flat out for 3 hours, but they'll have a mix of different things they're doing in it. They'll recover, they'll go back, most of them stay in a hotel in Dublin on campus or close to campus. They'll recover basically sleep, rest for 2 or 3 hours, come back and do a different session for about an hour and a half, and then they recover from the evening. They're not having to worry about, you know, getting on a call, doing a job, you know, rushing here, travelling long distances to training, getting a bite to eat, driving back up to Dublin, getting up for work early the next morning and stuff like that. You know, so they have that advantage in terms of that part. So all they've really got to think about is how am I physically and mentally preparing myself to perform my best. GA players, be it at club level, you know, and there's a huge level of intensity and focus even at club level and onwards into inter-county. They're doing the same sort of stuff, using the same sort of science to kind of back it up, but they just don't, like, the recovery is just not there. Like, I mean, I think, you know, like the split, you know, kind of going on a bit of a tangent, but like, I can understand the split season, but if you look at, particularly on the inter-county side, and inter-county guys going back into club and look at their season, there is no recovery. They're going literally game to game to game to game to game to game, and you know, building in more time for recovery between championship matches. They don't have that level of rest and recovery that a soccer player would have if he was playing game on game and game. And you definitely see kind of breakdown in terms of types of injuries you see fellas getting now.
Do you look at a match now? You go to a match in Cusick Park or whatever, not even Mullingar Shamrocks, but do you look at the game differently now? Do you look at lads and how they react to things, or can you just be the ordinary supporter, or are you kind of tuned? You know, you heard you say, you said there about, you know, the Shamrocks game. You can see a mistake and watch how lads react. Do you do that all the time, or can you just go out and roll your head off and? You know, it's a
long time since I've done that, and probably a lot of people will say thank God, because the one thing I learned in doing it was a lot of kind of emotional control myself. But yeah, no, I mean, like, look, when I'm with a team, generally, if I'm working with a team, I generally be just looking at either the backs or the forwards for periods of the game, and generally the periods of the game when they're not in possession. So if the team I was with is attacking, I'm actually looking at the backs to see how quickly are they resetting and where their focus is, or are they watching the game, essentially, from that point of view. When it comes to kind of watching games I'm not involved in, I would say definitely I've got way more emotionally detached from games, and tend to be a lot more analytical, and I'm not really looking for mistakes to happen, but when they're obvious ones, I would be really curious to see how fellas are reacting to them.
Very good, very interesting. Certainly something I know has, you know, come more and more into the inter-county scene, and we see it here with Westmeath, newly appointed management team. It's part of the backroom team now, nearly as standard. Yeah,
it's like, look, I mean, it's just another aspect of the game. You know, there's different approaches to it, and the thing about it is, like, even in a team environment, to your point, Damien, how you might do it with one guy on a team is very different than how you might do it with another guy. And you really, the real trick for me is you kind of really have to work hard to build relationships with players, understand them, and then you can kind of package things or approach them in a way that makes sense to them. And sometimes that can work, and sometimes, you know, some people can go, look, just not for me, Paul, and that's fine, you know, from that point of view. But it's definitely way more significant than it would have been. Like in my day, it was unheard of. Like, you know,
imagine what it was like in my day.
Well, no, thanks for the compliment.
Well, come here. We'll go on now. We'll get you involved with a Junior 2 team now next year, whatever, in Westmeath. As we're going to look forward.
Only when they get to a quarter final.
Okay, right. Well, you're ready. So there's 8 teams out there. They're in. The Junior 2 competition this year is gone to quarter-final stage, so we actually have no round of games in the Junior 2 Championship this weekend. But the results from the last day, Delvin 2-5, St Paul's 1-13, Tubberclair 21 points, Loughnavalley 3-11, Thirds Pass 2-15, Connery 1-17. So I think there was one other game in that group as well. So Mullingar Shamrocks, I think, played somebody because they have the 3 teams this year. So that's now at a stage where it's going to quarterfinals. It's the right idea. It's an opportunity for those clubs. Like, there's probably Loughnavalley, Delvin and Paul's is their only team, so it's a good thing that they're going to be playing knockout football. The others are second teams from the higher ranked team, so it's no harm that they'll get their day in the sun as well. And it's a good competition because last year, of course, we had Ballinagore winning Junior 2 and now progressing nicely through Junior 1. And with that, scores from the Junior 1. And I'm just going to go through the scores and then we will look on to the group games coming up this weekend. Junior 1, Section A, St. Loman's 2-13, the Downs 2-12, Athlone 2-4, Mullingar 2-12, and Carlson Kinnegad 3-14, Killucan 5-7. And in Section B, we had Bunbrusna 1-9, Moat 9 points, St. Joseph's 5-20, Ballycamoyle 5 points, and the big game of that weekend was Ballinagore 1-22, Ballycarrigy 3-13. Now our games coming this weekend in the junior section. Let me find my paperwork here. Junior 1. Section A is Mullingar Shamrocks and Carlson Kinnegad, the Downs Athlone. Another group of them as well. Damon, you having the fixtures there, no? And Section B, Ballycarrigy, Ballycamoyle, St. Joseph's and Moat White and Bunbrusna and Ballinagore. I think there's another fixture in that Junior 1 as well for this week. I'm not sure whether it's on or because I was just looking through the website, picking down the fixtures there before we came in. All those junior Section B games are on Sunday. Ballycarrigy and Ballycamoyle in Shandona 1:30. St. Joseph's and Moat White in Casttown at 1:30, followed by Bunbrusna and Ballinagore also in Casttown at 3 o'clock. That junior championship, Damien, is bubbling along nicely now. There's going to be 4 teams from each group going into the respective quarterfinals as well. But I suppose Ballinagore are the team to look at so far. 3 played, 3 won. We've already mentioned Thomas McDaniels, but I mean, there's no team, a one-man team. He is a great asset to them this year, but they're progressing along nicely in that.
Yeah, absolutely, and I was very interested in the Ballycarrigy Ballinagore last round game out in Multifarnham. Terrific contest, game of 2 halves, but Tommy McDaniel was just quite superb. And it was very interesting. That morning I was reading a little piece by Joe Brawley on the 2-pointers, and Joe Brawley was making a very valid point that a good footballer, a good forward with a breeze behind them now can really win a game in the first half or the second half with those 2-pointers.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, I went out to Multifarnham and Thomas McDaniel effectively won the match in the first half. Ballycarrigy were 11 points down at the break, and in terms of sports psychology, they certainly could have done with somebody after 15 or 20 minutes because heads were down. Nobody was following, nobody was chasing. The half-forward line, as far as I was concerned, they weren't getting back and closing down the spaces around the 40-metre arc. Thomas McDaniel was getting that space and he was just going to town. And Dara Siri then chipped in. I think they got 5 2-pointers in the first half alone. Now, turn it around. Ballycarrigy came out in the second half. And it wasn't 2-pointers, but goals. They had about 5 goal chances. They took 2 of them. One of them won a penalty. The other one from Troy Maher, a very fancy back heel. But they turned the game around and they had a chance at the end to even get closer to Ballinagore. They had a free and they went for a 2-pointer from the free. It was one of those situations. Do you go for a 2-pointer or do you go for the single pointer and press the kick out? I think what Ballycarrigy forgot about was, regardless, they had to press the kick out. They had to get in on top of Ballinagore for the next kick out, and they forgot to do that. Or let's just say Ballinagore won the restart and Ballinagore held on. They played the ball around for the last few minutes. Very composed, very experienced. I would honestly say that it's going to take a huge effort to stop Ballinagore winning this junior title. Now, having said that, I've seen some of the second string senior teams. St. Loman's, Mullingar Shamrocks, a fantastic match. St. Loman's and the Downs the last night in the last round, another fantastic match. So yeah, there's going to be very, very interesting quarterfinals and semi-finals there coming up.
Yeah, the group at the minute in Section B, which is the one with the first teams in it. Ballingore 3 from 3, St Joseph's 2 from 3, Bunbrusna 2 from 3. More All Whites, Ballycarrigy have one win each, and Ballycamoyle yet to get off the mark. So there's 4 of those teams going to qualify out of each group. Like in the second group, Mullingar Shamrocks, their second team 3 from 3. Loman's 1-2 lost 1, 4 points. Athlone 1-2 lost 1, 4 points. The Downs 1-1 lost 2 with 2 points. Coruscant Kinnegad the same, and then Colligan yet to get off the mark. There's 4 going to come out of each group, and really, the 2 teams at the top are unbeaten. We'll get a far better idea this weekend how they're going to be looking. But it's.
Are the quarterfinals crossovers?
Yeah, the 4 teams in Section A play.
4 teams.
1 plays 4 on the crossover.
Okay.
So look at that championship. The more than the intermediate championship is very, very hard to predict it. And the same this year. Like it's bubbling along nicely. And I suppose Damon and Paul T, the big thing for the second tier is that they don't lose players. That if they can try, someone comes up with injuries and they have to rob 1 or 2 of their stronger players off their junior team, it just weakens the whole thing. But it's a great competition, that junior football.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's the thing that kind of stands out for me, and I haven't seen any games in them, so I'm not going to kind of claim to know who's going well and who's not going well. But immediately when I was kind of thinking about tonight was Ballinagore have a huge amount of momentum with them for the last couple of years. They've been building and building and building, and look, it's obviously coming out in their results, and the fact that you're saying, Damien, they've two class forwards there who are able to pick off points, whether they're 2-pointers or 1-pointers, but somebody who's going to guarantee you 4 or 5 1 or 2-pointers in a game, and you've got 2 of them in your team. That's a hard scoring threat to close down. You can shut down one of them, but then somebody else can pop up, and that it'd augur well for them in that sort of sense. But in saying that, if the likes of Loman's, Mullingar don't lose players, they've a lot of talent coming through in that space as well.
Yeah, they've young lads coming out of underage, coming out of minor, whatever. And look, we've said it on numerous occasions. It's a great grounding for those young lads, and on the other end, you have lads maybe just stepping back from senior football, the legs not what they used to be, or for whatever reason. But at the same time, in that Section B, I think St Joseph's and Bunbrusna are still going to have a big say in who wins that junior championship. Like Joseph's beaten in the final last year. Bun, we know all about Bun. They've been around the block a few times with lads, but they're still there. They're hard to beat. Got a nice win the last day as well. So they're keeping nicely in touch as well. So again, lots to play for this weekend. Well,
St Joseph's are the big threat as I see it.
Yeah.
They scored 3-11 the last day.
They did.
That's quite impressive, and they have the likes of Jordan McDonald, these capable forwards who can get these scores. And the big score lines now, that's what you're seeing, that's the trend you're kind of seeing, and you need to have scoring forwards to have any chance. And St Joseph's, they were knocking on the door last year. They haven't gone away.
Beaten in the final. Well, 5-20 they put up. Now I know Ballycamoyle are very weak for whatever is. But for whatever reason, like, they have been competitive for the last number of years, just doesn't seem to be going for them out there this year. They're pointless. They're looking very like they're going to go through a trap door. Still have a chance to get out of it, but for St Joseph's to really put them to the sword. 5-20 big scoring.
Huge.
Look, we'll move on to the intermediate Section B. Results from the last game: Milton Pass 3-16, Kilbeggan 1-7. Ballymore 4-10, Maryland 17 points, and Castledaly 3-15, Castletownfenay Cool Whitehall 1-11. And the round of fixtures in that intermediate Section B this year, the big 2, I suppose, are going to clash in the Downs on Saturday evening at 5 o'clock. That's Milton Pass and Castledaly, and that's followed by Maryland and Kilbeggan also in the Downs at 6:30. And the third game in that group is on Sunday in Shandona, 3 o'clock, between Castletownfenay, Cool Whitehall and Ballymore. Lads, the one that's jumping out there is the Milton Pass Castledaly game. Milton Pass, we covered them on Iarmhi TV in the last round again against Kilbeggan. They look very, very impressive with, Brandon Kelly, number 1, he's a current county player, and then they were able to bring back Sam Duncan, who looks like he's never been away.
Yeah, and throw in Finbar Coyne,
absolutely,
and Liam Brennan. They've got talent, again, good score getters. And they're physically, they're quite a strong outfit up the middle. Now they're going to face a seasoned outfit in Castledaly. It's going to be very interesting. Miltown Pass scored 3-16 the last day, Castledaly 3-15. One Miltown Pass's game was against Colligan Shamrocks. The other game was against Castledown Cool Whitehall, the Castledaly game. So like Colligan Shamrocks, Castledown Cool Whitehall kind of been battling around the same level, if you like, in recent years. So I think that was a good yardstick for this round. But yes, I suppose Miltown Pass probably that little step ahead at the moment, and you'd fancy them maybe to come out on top in that Section B.
Like for me, just looking at Miltown Pass, and just looking at the table there, they've 35 points more scored than Castledaly.
Right.
So
they're three from three.
Yeah, they're 3 from 3. Their 4 is 88. Castledaly's is 51. Now they're both pretty similar in terms of defensives. So that would suggest to me, like both of them on average are kind of conceding, 10 to 15 points a game, 10 to 12 points a game. Miltown Pass have a lot more scoring power. But in saying that, Dan Heaven and Lurkin Dolan are well capable. They're fellas who are well capable of kicking 2-pointers in games from that point of view. So really, I think obviously Castledaly will need to be shutting down Brandon Kelly. He's just been shooting the lights out.
I think he's 8 goals in 3 games. 2 hat-tricks, and they took him off probably after 40 minutes in the last game when he probably was aiming for the third.
I want the golden boot. So that's the key for Castledaly to give themselves a platform. They need to really shut down the service to him. He will get ball. If he gets ball, he probably will get scoring opportunities. It's probably the work that's further out the field to stop that possession coming into him, and then they have a right chance. But if you kind of look at it at the moment, Miltown Pass look on a fair decent roll now at the moment.
They're 3 from 3. Just looking at the table, Castledaly 2 from 3. They're 4 points. Maryland, Kilbeggan, Ballymore and Castledown Cool Whitehall all with 1 win, 2 defeats. So again, a win for Miltown Pass would guarantee a place in a top on the table and a quarter final against the 4th team in the Section A. Castledaly get themselves back up into it, then they'll have them maybe on the head-to-head, and they could top the team and get an easier quarter final. But the other 4 teams in that group, it's one of them is going to go back through the trap door. Castledown, the ones that came up the last time, they'll be hoping that they don't have to go back down through it. A big game this weekend, Maryland and Kilbeggan.
Yeah, and the other teams in that Section B will be all hoping, of course, that Miltown Pass keep going now. They don't. But the last thing they want, because second place is up for grabs if Miltown Pass keep going. If Castledaly turn them over this weekend, and they would be underdogs, but it is possible. But if they do, then it becomes a very, very, difficult scenario for the other 4 teams. But getting back to your Ballymore game versus Maryland.
What are we this weekend? Maryland, Kilbeggan, yes.
Kilbeggan, crucial.
They took a little bit of a, I don't like using the word drubbing or anything like that, but like Miltown Pass were way better than them in that last game. But I think it was probably a game that they realised themselves. Nigel Adams was there with them, and they probably realised that it might be bit too far from them. But this is a game now that if they're going to stave off relegation and keep themselves safe, and any hope of getting that last place, a win here is going to be crucial for either of these teams.
Yeah, and Maryland will be a bit stung as well. They lost to Ballymore the last day. So, both teams coming into it on the back of kind of different kind of defeats. Maryland, they lost a big lead in their game, whereas Kilbeggan Shamrocks probably didn't look like they had a chance of overturning Miltown Pass. But they'll be, they've still got capable players, Kilbeggan Shamrocks, and the likes of Nigel Scally. Killian Rochford's having a good year for them. So, they're still a good young side, and they'll be very keen to test themselves now against a more experienced opposition like Maryland, with the likes of Callum McCormack there, still a driving force. Kieran Martin hanging around, Kenny Kincaid, those kind of players, very experienced. That's a key game.
Yeah, the other game, Athlone, Fnae, Cool, Whitehall and Ballymore. And just looking at the table, you know, those 4 teams are playing each other.
Yeah.
So like wins for 2 of them is nearly going to make them safe, I suppose, if that's your first priority. And also on the other hand, a win for 2 of them and a defeat for Castledaly. And then, as Damien said, you're then looking at the second place in that group.
Well, I mean, I think it's all to play for among those 4 teams. Really, you know, you're kind of going into it going, we get a win here, we're back in the mix. I don't think any of them would be looking at it at this stage in terms of staying safe, because they all have the potential, like, you know, win their last 2 games, they'd all be on 6 points. Well, not whoever won their last 2 games. And that definitely put them back in the mix, particularly if Milltown Pass overturned Castledaly.
Yeah.
So it's there's a lot to play for in both of those, the Maryland Kilbeggan game and the Ballymore Castletown Fnae game. And I think, you know, Ballymore coming in after a good local rivalry win, which will definitely give them a boost. And, you know, there's a fair sprinkling of hurlers from Dalton's in that Ballymore team who, you know, produced the best result they've had in a long time a couple of weeks ago against Pollard. You know, so confidence will be high among all of those. You know, they've got a bit of momentum coming into that game, which I think will serve them very well.
Yeah, and I think it's important that I think the one will feed off the other. Like if Father Dalton's get a win in a hurling game, and suddenly Ballymore get a win in a football game, and you know, water rises everything at the one time, and you know.
I see John Gilligan has reinvented himself in both hurling and football as a full forward, and using his wily skills in both positions. So I think that's good to see.
Yeah, but on that, you know, for Castleton, Fnae, Cool, Whitehall, on that last game with Ballymore, they came up, you know, they were very strong at junior last year. Like they won the final comfortably. It has to be said, no, it was in horrible conditions, but they won it comfortably in the end. You know, for the likes of them, a team that comes up, I think the first thing is try and consolidate, get a second year at it. You know, their problem out there is the opposite of what has happened with Ballymore, and the Castle Pollard are having a bad year. Now, maybe, you know, with only 1 round of hurling left to go, and they might just have a cut at this one. And if they get a win over Ballymore, you know, they'll be very, very pleased in probably establishing themselves for another year in that Section B.
Yeah, I think the challenge for like Castleton Fnae is really scoring. You know, if you look through some of the other teams, you can kind of rhyme off a couple of, you know, good quality forwards who can rattle off, you know, a decent score for themselves individually in points and so on. To me, even looking at Castleton Fnae last year, just really balanced across the field, but there was no marquee forward who was kind of going to deliver scores for them, and I think that might be posing a bit of a challenge for them at the moment.
Yeah, and I'm just, I know you're looking at teams there, and Damien with Fnae, and I'm not sure whether Alan Devine is playing with them this year or not, but I know he went off with an injury yesterday, so...
Yeah, no, he wasn't playing the last day here.
Okay.
Joe Rabbit would be one of those key forwards. Conor Gaffney's playing there, Ryan Plunkett's the season campaigner. I suppose a very valid point. They're more balanced as a team than having a good individual, which is sometimes, you know, crucial, especially in the modern game.
And at this
level, sometimes can be good. Like you're not reliant on one fella that gets shut down or whatever. True. But you know, if you look at kind of most of those teams, you know, if you look at Milltown Pass, you can rattle off Brandon Kelly, you know, and so on. You know, you look at Ballinagore previously in junior, you can say Tommy MacDonald is Dara Seary, is Dara Daniel?
Dara Seary.
Yeah. And you know, they're go-to forwards that you know will deliver scores if they're not shut down. You know, sometimes when you have a balanced team, you have to work that bit harder to kind of get yourself scores.
Yeah, look, we'll know a hell of a lot more come next weekend as to how that table is going to shape up. Look, going on into Section 8, results from the last game. The first one was Rosemount and St Mary's, which was Rosemount 2-14, St Mary's 1-12. Maybe an upset, I don't know whether it's right or not. Milltown 115, Tubberclair 111, and Shandona comprehensive over multi 317 to 1-8. Fixtures coming up this weekend in Section A. Shandona versus St Mary's, Tubberclair versus Multifarnham, and Roseman versus Milltown. Shandona and St Mary's in Kinnegad on Saturday evening at 5 o'clock. Tubberclair and Multifarnham in Ballinaccarrigy again on Saturday evening at 6:15. And Roseman against Milltown is in Kinnegad at 6:30 on the Saturday. Now, just for anyone that's listening here, I've taken these details from the website. I know since on the last round of games when we announced that we were here on a Monday night, whatever, by the Friday there was some games had changed. Don't hang me for it. I'm only updating it from what I have on the Westmeath GA website at the minute, and I checked these off maybe an hour ago. So, you know, that's the round this week. Damon, I went down to Ballymore on the Friday night to see Rosemount and Rochford Bridge. They're the two teams at the minute that are at the bottom of the table, but Rosemount, you know, looked like they've come back into a little bit of form. I thought David Riley was absolutely outstanding in the middle of the field, bossed the game a lot of the time for them, and Baidu absolutely outstanding as well. I think you were down at it as well, I think, were you?
Yes, I was, yeah. A very, very workmanlike performance from Rosemount. Again, well-balanced outfit. No real star in terms of somebody getting a huge total, but really worked hard for each other. And in the second half, when the pressure came on, they were getting bodies back. What I was talking about earlier, players were not afraid to put in the hard yards, get back, close down the space in front of St Mary's, who were coming right back into the game. Rosemount had a huge lead at half time, I think 11 points, if memory serves me correct.
296 or something. It looked like
St
the
Mary's,
Roman holes.
and there was no significant breeze, but it's gas. St Mary's started to win kickouts. They started to take a grip at midfield in the second half, and they got a bit of momentum, got right back to within 3 points. Rosemount, then a key moment in the match, Rosemount had Declan Mullen sent off, but within a minute, St Mary's reacted, retaliated, whatnot. They lost a player, and the advantage was gone. You know, so that was a key moment for me in that match, because St Mary's were right back in it. And it stayed very close then for a little period after that. And Rosemount came up with a fantastic point. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head. It was one of the Coxes, one of the Cox brothers who came up with the point, Ben, I think. A great score, great team score. He joined at the end and kicked a fine point. And after that, you know, Baidu, who you mentioned, was a real powerhouse, I thought, at centre back. Davy Riley, of course, at midfield. But, you know, despite the fact that they've lost players, and they've lost players through injury, and they don't have Andy McCormick, who would be, he'd walk on to most teams, let's be honest, in the county. You know, they're not sitting back and, you know, crying on their losses, so to speak. They're getting stuck in, they're putting in the effort, and that was a crucial victory for them there in that round.
For Rochford Bridge, I know Paul, nothing to him, but I thought the one thing that Damien Gam would have been very, very disappointed about, and you talked about a crucial score, I think they gave away maybe 2 points from the infringement of not keeping two players up, and one of them happened at the time when I think there might have been only 3 in it, and had all the momentum, were pushing, linesman copped and flagged the referee. You know, it's a giveaway, but I think at this stage where you're after playing a full league campaign, you're halfway through a championship campaign, to commit those kind of errors. I know they're mental errors, and I know players have to be tuned in more, but it was...
Sometimes what can happen in those sort of situations is you're pushing, you're chasing the game. Enthusiasm's through the roof. Everyone wants to work really, really hard, and that little bit of discipline of remembering, have a check before you go, and you're going, I'm going to chase them. We're in it now, and we're going after it, and suddenly it's really, really tough in those situations. And like, it's kind of counterintuitive when you're chasing a game and you want to get possession back, to get back up and get another point back and get another point back, to kind of go, well, no, I can't go anywhere. I've got to stand here in the line. And it really requires a hell of a lot of discipline to be able to kind of, one, be clued into it, and B, to actually do it. I'd always, and I don't mean blame, but the two forwards who were behind the fellow who crossed the line, were they communicating?
Yeah.
Were they telling them? Were they, look, because they're not involved.
Yeah.
And they have the opportunity to see what it is and go, no, hold your line, hold your line.
But it was remarkable in that, I'm just looking back at there were 5 breaches in that match of the 3-up rule. So
it's a
lot.
Like we hadn't seen that many, and I don't have many games. I'd looked at it, in the previous 2 rounds. We hadn't seen them, and that was, I'd say, more disappointing for Damien.
And they suffered. I think they were caught 3 times.
Yeah, and I think actually, if I'm right from being there, I think one of the goals that Rosemount got, the linesman was actually flagging for an infringement against Rochesterbridge as well, and the referee allowed the play to go on, and Rosemount got the goal out of it. So, it was, St Mary's, like, they looked dead and buried at half time. They got themselves back, showed great fighting spirit, credit to them to get back into it, but just in the end, Rosemount just had enough. And Damien, that could kickstart Rosemount's campaign now. They have a game this weekend against Milltown, which won't be an easy one, but I think they play multi in the last round of the game, so Rosemount is still fancy that they can sneak into 4th place in that table yet.
Yes, and they won't fear this weekend. You would have to say, on the balance of things and on form and on the way the kind of championship has gone so far, that Milltown go into that game as favourites, having beaten Tubberclair the last day, and they seem to be finding a little bit of form, players coming back, etc. But it will be a test, and it's going to be interesting to see who emerges from that.
Yeah, Milltown, as you said, they needed form because they had only 1 point going into that, so they had to produce it. Again, credit to them, they picked probably the biggest of their 3 games so far to get that win. Like, that's a big win, because a win in the last game for that game for Tubberclair would have left them, been a little bit of a gap in the table if it had happened with themselves and Shandona going top. That has the makings of a cracking match now, that Milltown-Rosemount game. And Rosemount, and they've got huge support. They're always so enthusiastic out there. Men, women and children come out and support the football team, and they'll be having a right cut at this one now on Saturday.
I think they're both well in the mix. Like, I mean, there's four out of the 6 go through. I think it's going to be a bit of a steep task for the Bridge now.
Yeah, I think fair
just
enough.
not having any points at all to go off. The most they can get to is 4. That's going to be a real challenge for them from that point of view. But, like, definitely between Milltown and Rosemount, there's not much between them. They're both going into the game with a lot of momentum, and they're both seasoned, experienced teams as well. They know how to kind of
Milltown
grind.
beat in the final last year. Play.
I'd say, like, I'd say they'd be happy enough with where they are, provided they get a win at the weekend.
Tubberclair and Multi, both of them beaten Damien in the last round. Multi without Ronan Wallace. A win here is crucial for either of these if they want to keep their aspirations of staying in this championship as well.
Yeah, and so difficult to judge Multi Farnham the last day, because they were wiped out by Shandona, who moved the ball very well, it must be said, and looked a team on a different level. They certainly looked like a senior team playing an intermediate team, and a lot of quality in their team right throughout, from the half back line up along. Multi Farnham, difficult to judge them without their best player, without their marquee player, Roland Wallace. He was missing. He had scored 117 in the previous round, so
17 points.
I think it just seemed to knock the stuffing out of them straight away, and they couldn't find a response. There was once or twice they were almost in for a goal. There was a moment in the second half when they had a half chance, but then Shandona went down the pitch, scored a goal themselves, and it was never a contest.
Right.
Let's be honest, it was never a contest.
Shandona have been coming along nicely. They were unlucky last year, Paul. They were relegated in the playoff by 1 point. Lost again by 1 point against Moorhall Whites. Sometimes it's hard to refocus when you go down. You can feel sorry for yourself, whatever, we should be a senior team, blah blah blah. But they have knuckled right down now, and they're definitely making strides to get back out of it. Yeah.
No, without a shadow of a doubt, that relegation game could have gone either way as well. I think there was a game before that in the final round where it was kind of nip and tuck as well. I think the challenge sometimes for teams that come out of intermediate into senior is trying to maintain that momentum and keep it going. You put so much effort into getting up, you achieve senior, and then it's like, well, if you want to stay up senior and do something, it's like you got to double down and do even more, and it can be really, really hard to sustain that over 2-3 years. And you can see that a lot with teams that kind of get promoted through junior to intermediate to senior. It's kind of like so much effort goes into getting there that it's kind of like, do we have? And then you have players going, well, I had a great year last year, I'm going to travelling, or I'm going to go and do something else. And I think you can kind of see it a little bit with Multi is Ronan Wallace is so talismanic for them, and is just his presence alone, regardless of his scoring and his football ability and so on, creates a confidence and an aura for them. And also is a massive distraction figure for the opposition. It's like, well, how are we going to take care of him? How are we going to shut him down and so on? So suddenly, you're going in playing Multi and you're building half your game plan around shutting Ronan Wallace down, not thinking about, well, how are we going to play and what are we going to do? Look, Shandona, I think they're going really well. They have a sprinkling of really talented young lads throughout the team as well, and that's given them a bit of energy and momentum. And I suspect they'll be able to sustain that. Whether it brings them an intermediate title or not, I like every year I'd say the same thing. It's like I have no clue who's going to win intermediate.
I think we all do. But look at they're 3 from 3. Like, they can't do any better than that. Tubberclair 2 from 3. Milltown winning a draw from there and a defeat. Multi the same, and then Rosemouth with that 1 win on the bridge are pointless. So again, we're definitely on move on Saturday, as I think Pat O'Brien called it here when we were previewing hurling. But this round will tell us an awful lot more. Shandona and St Mary's on Saturday evening in Kinnegad at 5 o'clock. Tubberclair and Multi and Ballycarrigy at 6:15, and Rosemouth and Milltown in Kinnegad also at 6:30. So a nice double header there. It should be a big crowd for those 2 games, Shandona and Mary's and Rosemouth and Milltown. So nice evening's entertainment there if a fella has nothing else to do, or if you don't want to head to Cusick Park. So we'll move on to Section B of the Senior Championship. And the last round, we had wins for Moorhall Whites, 121 to 18 points over Killucan. Collery had a big win, 216 to 113 over Tang. And in the last game in that group, the last day was Garrycastle 418, St Malachy's 14 points. And we'll move on quickly before Tom Brown picks us up on that one. But around the fixtures this weekend, probably the standout game on that group, Garrycastle and Collery on Saturday evening in TG Cusick Park at 4:30, followed by another big game between Moorhall Whites and St Malachy's also in that group. That's at 6:15. Both of those in TG Cusick Park, both of them live on Iarmhi TV. And the third game in the group, Tang versus Killucan on Sunday in Rochford Bridge at 1:30. We're going to start with that top game on Saturday evening, the first one on Iarmhi TV, Garrycastle and Collery. Paul, I'm going to go back to you and pick up your point on teams with momentum. Now, here's a team that came out of intermediate championship last year. A lot of people would have said they should never have been in it. They were. They had to get out of it. They did what they had to do, but they've carried them in. I know they're an experienced team. There's a lot of senior medals in that team, but they've done well. They're 3 from 3 in that group. Can't have done any better. So they'll be looking now with another win this weekend. But Colliery maybe haven't been as prolific or as successful as they would have hoped. Just looking at the table, they have 4 points, but this is a huge game this weekend. Like a win for Colliery, and it's going to throw this thing right into the melting pot.
Yeah, I think, with Garrycastle, they have the experience, and while they won last year, it was definitely a cause of passion to get back up and right the wrongs of getting relegated and so on and so forth. They carried the momentum nicely into the league and ended up in a league final, which generated, just kept that momentum going. And suddenly, like, you're winning games in the league. It's kind of like, it's easy go training then.
Yeah.
It's easy keep going, and they've brought that into the championship. I think the biggest standout thing for me is Garrycastle's defence. I've seen them a couple of times. I think they're incredibly well organised at the back. I was just scanning through the table there. I think they've the lowest scores conceded in the whole senior championship.
Okay.
At 41 points, I don't think there's any other team apart from the Downs, who've only conceded 30. So, that's given them a real platform for their performances. And I think, okay, it's probably a little bit of a kind of a local derby against Colliery. And, Colliery have been probably not achieving as good of performances as they probably would want to or might have done in previous years, but they're still well in it in terms of, they've only lost 1 game. And both teams would see this as this is setting them up for a quarter final from even going into the last game. So there's an awful lot to play for both teams. That would be an interesting game.
Well, yeah, Garrycastle on the table, 3 from 3. Moorhall Whites and Colliery, 2 from 3, 4 points apiece. Killucan with 1 win and 2 losses, 2 points. Malachy's 1 win and 2 losses. Tangya to get off the mark. But when you look at that game, a win for Colliery is going to really tighten things up, because Moorhall Whites then are going into their game at the weekend, against St Malachy's. They're probably going to be favourites to get 2 points there. So we could have 3 teams sitting next Saturday evening with 6 points, and going into the last round of games. And I think it's Moorhall Whites and Colliery in the last game. So that'll certainly be a winner take all game. If it could easily turn out. Damien, have you seen? You weren't down watching Colliery last weekend. Did you see them or?
No, but just looking here at some of the detail from that, Conor McCormick, who played in goals for Westmeath this year, some people would say bizarrely so, but he scored 10 points for them. Now, Senan Baker was back, scoring 4. Obviously, Tyg Baker, key player. And when you look at the Garrycastle outfit, Michael Monaghan, again, player with great experience and quality, scoring 1-7. Owen Mulvihill, Cathal Mannion, all these guys, featuring on the scoreboard. And like Paul said, experience in defence. James Dolan's still there. You would have to say, on the basis of what we've seen so far, Garrycastle will go into that game with a slight edge, and it is a little bit of a derby. I know from I did a little bit of work when I was with the GAA in the Colliery club, a fantastic club, very keen to make progress, but there's a little bit of rivalry there between Garrycastle, who come very close, and indeed the schools in the area, kind of, young kids overlapping. So there's a little bit of territory, there's a little bit of everything about this. It's a big game, and much more crucial, I would say, for Colliery, because they lost early ground in that championship. They would have been disappointed in that group. They would have been disappointed with their first round performance. I'd say Pat Flanagan, their manager, would have been very keen to get them back in and to reassess and to look at things. Now they bounced back well. They got the win against
against
Tang, who will always be tenacious, and
again another and a local derby edge, that one as well.
Yeah, but you would say on the balance of things, Colliery probably going into that game against Garrycastle slight outsiders.
They're getting a bit stronger though.
Yeah.
You know, the players have come back.
Yeah.
Conor McCormick back out the field and playing well. You know, Senna Baker is a huge player to be able to bring back in fit, and you know, probably rested as well from whatever, but he'll certainly add to them.
No, I think, I mean, like, I'll be honest and say I wouldn't even venture to predict this game. I think, you know, Colliery, as you said, Damien, like, not the start they wanted, but they're probably in a nice position and they're building nicely. You know, this is a big game for both of them. You know, Garrycastle have the advantage because they have 2 more points, but you know, Colliery get that, it's 6 points each, and then depending on how the other games go, gets very, very squeaky bum come into the last round. You know, I think it's almost, it's an interesting one. You know, if I take Kevin Maguire out of the equation, it's kind of youthful energy versus real experience and knowing how to manage, and sometimes the experience in these sort of games can kind of come out on top in terms of knowing how to manage, you know, when to slow it down, when to speed it up, how to manufacture a score. All those sort of things can kind of play a big part in the game.
Yeah, the other game, part of the double header in TG Cusick Park, Moathall Whites and St Malachy's. Now we covered Moathall Whites in the last game against Killucan, and you know, ended up comfortable enough with winners in the end. 6 points the difference between the sides. Killucan, I'd say, would have been disappointed with their performance that day, but Moat, they were the team that went into the relegation game last year, and they survived, you know, by the skin of their teeth. Really, they have changed management, and they seem to be getting a good kick out of Val Daly and the new setup in there. A win for them here next week put them on 6 points, and you know, it leaves them going into their last game as you know, a knockout game as such then against Colliery. And look at the form book said that they should get over Malachy's, but we've often said it here, Damien, right off St Malachy's at your peril. Yeah,
and they'll be very keen to, you know, show that last day really wasn't true to form for them. They conceded 4-19. They'll want to put that right first of all, but interesting, you know, Robbie Ford playing very well for Moathall Whites. Good to see that. You know, he's their marquee man, scoring 1-9 the last day, and they will be looking to push on. 121 is a good score. Beating Killucan by 12 points. Not too many teams will do that, so they're bound to take a huge confidence from that result. The St Malachy's scenario now, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out with Castleton-Gagan and same group of players, most of the players anyway, doing so well at senior hurling. You know, where will they be thinking at the back of their own minds going into this game? And you know, it is a chance to get back into it, but they're going to have to improve on this performance against Garrycastle.
Yeah, and like conceding 4 goals, but then Garrycastle are a type of team that if they get a run and you make a mistake, they'll punish you to the full.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, it's really just how you bounce back from it.
Yes.
You know, I suppose one advantage you do have is the hurling's going quite well. It's not a distraction coming into the game in terms of, you know, well, we've a bigger game coming up next week or anything from that point of view for Malachy's. Like, I think there's a real kick in them. Knowing some of the personalities who were in that group, that'll have hurt them. And they'll be definitely wanting to put a different foot forward in terms of the next game against Moat. And you know, Moat are young and very exuberant and can be very free flowing at times, but if you can manage to shut them down a little bit, like happened last year to a degree, you know, they start taking on things maybe they shouldn't take, and then it kind of just wide after wide after wide and a bit of momentum. I think the longer Malachy stay in that game, the better their chance of winning it.
Player I was very impressed with them when we covered that game against Killucan was Toby Conte. You know, he lined out at full forward, and he was a handful. And I think it was Paul who was on commentary with me. He even managed to kick a couple of nice pints with his left foot as well. I think Paul said I never seen him kicking a free in his life, but he was excellent. And Darrell Lowry is a player that we've mentioned before here, but he seems to be maturing into a real quality player.
Yes, and Conte's ability to carry the ball, when he takes off, like he strides, he can make strides very quickly, and that's one of his big strengths. So, like, that's the first thing they'll have to do is come up with a plan to kind of shut that down. They can't be letting him run at them. Darrell Lowry, yes, an exciting young prospect, playing at midfield for Moat All Whites. They'll be buoyed up by that result, getting 22 scores, 121 against Killucan.
Good scoring. Good scoring. They're right in it. And you know, Darrell Lowry, from the very throw in of that game, he stepped back at centre back and he almost hit a Gavin White on the break, on the throw in the All-Ireland final, where the first ball broke. He got on it, he burst it through, and he actually just set the tone, I thought, for Moat for it. So look, they'll be looking for more from him. I think indeed, as will whoever our new Westmeath manager will be for 2026. He's certainly one for the future, I think, anyway. The last game of that group, lads, Tang and Killucan. Now Tang, you know, they're heading very, very close to last chance saloon. Killucan not safe either. A win here for Tang, and this is going to become very interesting down at the bottom of the table.
Crucial game, and Tang suffering a little, in fairness to them, a proud club, but they've lost the likes of Adam Neary. The guys, Paul spoke about it earlier, their guys sometimes need a break. They want to see a bit of the world, they want to do something different. That's fair enough, but the smaller clubs, smaller rural clubs tend to suffer when they lose 2 or 3, and I think we're seeing that, despite the fact that they were very spirited the last day, scoring 113. They are missing the likes of Adam Neary, you know, and it's a big test for them. Killucan, that's going to be a very interesting match. There's a lot of interesting games again.
There is, Killucan, I know Raharney are winning games, but you know, maybe not convincingly. So the sluggishness seems to just crept over into Killucan's football as well. I know they have some of the lads from Turin playing, like Sean Leach is a quality player. Missed a couple of chances in that game that could have affected the result of it. But Killucan, you know, not safe. As I said, a win for Tang here in this one, and there's going to be a right dogfight. And the last thing, you know, any of them want to do is be hitting that trap door.
Yeah, I think, I mean, like when you look through that Killucan team, there's a lot of quality footballers in it. There's a lot of quality footballers in it, and you know, just so far this year, it just hasn't really clicked for them. You know, whatever the reason is, you know, whether the hurling's a bit of a distraction, maybe not, who knows. I mean, that's something they've always had to deal with, and probably and dealt with it pretty successfully over the years. So you know, I wouldn't really kind of put anything at that door. I think it's just a matter of, you know, how can you kind of get that team to kind of unleash its potential and the energy, because there's a lot of really energetic, fast moving, direct running players, and you know, when again, a team like them, when they get a bit of momentum going, they can really go at you and can score. I was interested to see Devon Hill came on.
Yeah, I think Devon has been carrying, I think someone said to me a hand injury, I don't know, but a huge loss to Killucan is Sam Smith.
Yeah,
I think Sam is, I know someone told me, again talking, I think it's a hamstring injury he has. You know, you could get a hamstring injury this time and your year might be finished. Like, he's a huge, like, he was excellent for Westmeath when he came in later on in the year, you know, playing a full back, and kind of he's one for the future for us. He's been playing centre back for Killucan. He's a huge factor, and if he's gone again for this game,
and played really well in the first round when they drew with Colliery. You know, so to lose him then, but Sammy Clark getting 14 points the last day. So, like Paul said, there's plenty of quality and plenty of strength. Physically, you know, they're a strong outfit as well.
And Devon Hill started for Harney Hurling yesterday, so they'll be hoping that he's fit, ready to start from. But come back to Sammy Clark. he's a very, very talented player. I know he is a very good soccer player, but a feature, he's kicking frees left or right off the ground. You know, it's maybe easy to tip on over from the 13-metre line with your left foot or whatever, but he's actually kicking them both feet
sides.
off the ground. He's a very talented player. Then he needs a little bit more help up front now for this weekend.
Yeah, for sure. But I think that's a crucial game for both teams in reality. Probably, a win for Tang brings them right back into it. A win for Colligan, kind of, depending on how other results go, they could kind of see a bit of a sniff of something for themselves coming into the last round. So, definitely a game to watch.
Yeah. So again, Garrycastle and Colliery 4:30 p.m. on the Saturday in TG Cusick Park, followed by Moathall Heights and St Malachy's 6:15. Both games live on Iarmhi TV, and the third game is on the Sunday in Rochester Bridge at 1:30. That's Tang and Killucan. Right, lads, we'll move on to the last group, Section A of the senior thing. And look, for anyone that's at home watching to us, don't worry, we'll get back to get the lads' predictions, because the predictions are the things that seem to motivate some of the team talks leading into the weekend. So we won't disappoint you. We'll be back to that in a couple of minutes after we have a look at Section A of the Senior B. Last week's games, or the last round games, Tubberclair won 14, Athlone 15 points. Coruscant Kinnegad 320, Mullingar Shamrocks 213, and the Downs 316, St Loman's 110. Round of fixtures this weekend. The Downs play Athlone on Sunday in Rochester Bridge at 3 o'clock. And the other two games live on Iarmhi TV from TG Cusick Park at 4:15, Tubberclair versus Coruscant Kinnegad, St Loman's versus Mullingar Shamrocks. Now, looking at those round of games, boys, to me, the one to look at, the big one, is the Mullingar Derby, St Loman's and Mullingar Shamrocks. We'll leave Paul out of this one for a second, though. We're not going to leave him out completely. St Loman's, Damien, would have been disappointed, I'm sure, with the performance against the Downs in the last round.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would say most observers would have felt that game was going to be a lot closer, even though they probably would have edged towards the Downs, who seem to have that drive and momentum and that hunger and desire this year, to right the wrongs of losing in a penalty shootout in last year's final. So they're a very determined outfit, but you would have expected a team of St Loman's quality and experience to be a lot closer in that match. And that's going to hurt. And that's, sports psychology and all the rest, but a result like that, I think, would hurt an experienced outfit like St Loman's. And it's going to be very interesting to see what Paddy Dowdall can do to get the players to regroup. The advantage he has, of course, is all the leaders within the group. All the leaders that are there, from John Heslin right through. So some might say, well, it's an easy task, but it's still a challenge. And all of a sudden, they're coming up against their neighbours and keen rivals, who have improved a little bit as well in recent years. And okay, the result against Coruscant Kinnegad again, Mullingar Shamrocks will be disappointed. They would have expected to be a lot closer. People would have expected them to give Coruscant Kinnegad a right test. They didn't, and again, that's going to sting. So it's going to be, it has, the backdrop for quite an entertaining match, I think. Yeah,
St Loman's, you mentioned Paddy Dowdall there, but the big player that they're waiting on to come back is, of course, Sam McCartan, and they have Sam carrying an injury, and I suppose they're trying to manage him and let him recover properly and get back. And probably for Mullingar Shamrocks, he'll be the last person they'll be looking to see starting for them for Lomas at the weekend. But Shamrocks themselves, Paul, they did fade out that last game against Coruscant Kinnegad, and I know they'll be set by a lot of injuries.
Yeah, a lot of injuries, but I mean, look, the second half was very, very disappointing. I kind of touched on it at the start. I think for 20 minutes, Shamrocks couldn't get out from a kick out. There was penetration. I think Paddy Fagan going off was a big loss to them in terms of his ability to carry the ball and penetrate into the forwards and drive forward. It just looked very, very disjointed. And at the back, throughout, to be honest with you, they were too far off Kinnegad. Like even in the first half where the game was even, Kinnegad were picking off points in space up front, and just the separation between defender and attacker was way too much. Whereas Kinnegad in the second half were really, really impressive. They were able to, one, they broke every kick out, they won every break, they used that as a platform. Young Giles and I can't remember who's the other guy midfield, Daly midfield, like just they won everything there. And then you had Leach and Callum Cruz inside, and they were just dipping into these little pockets of space at the top of the D and around the D, and using that as a platform to get runners through. And they were really, really slick in their movement. It was very similar to the Downs in terms of how they were able to find those pockets of space in around the D through good kind of combination play and so on.
Yeah, Loman will be looking to rebound now. There's plenty of pride at stake here. We on this podcast last year we were looking to a possible, I think was it a semi-final between the two of these teams. It didn't work out that way because Terrace passed through a spanner in the works there and got through to the semi-final instead of Shamrocks. But neither of these teams will want to lose this one day. I mean, like it's local pride. You're talking about going to school down in around Athlone and Mount Temple, but all these lads will know each other, battling against each other right from under 14 up, mine under 20 and into senior. So there'll be no love lost between the two of these. And looking at the table, the Downs, very confident at the top of the table with 6 points, 3 from 3. But after that, you have Athlone and Loman with only 3 points, a win and a draw. And then you have Mullingar, Carson, Kinnegad and Terrace Pass with 2. So, Mullingar get a win here, they can be right back into it, and the year far from over. Remember, there's 4 to qualify now with a 6 on that table as well. So there's still a huge amount to play in the last 2 rounds of games in this group.
Yeah, I think, to me, if you look at that Loman's Shamrocks games, like both Paddy and Michal have a huge amount of work to do in between the last game and this game. Loman's looked very disjointed and individualistic in terms of how they play. They just didn't look at all cohesive in terms of their pattern and play, and look quite open at the back on occasions. And Shamrock's pretty similar. Yeah. And I really think, it'll kind of come down to, 3 things to me really, in terms of how the teams address it. One is who's got a better kick-out strategy and can execute it on the day better. Restarts are crucial to me in that sense. Second one is whose defence can tighten up the most in terms of limiting scoring opportunities. And then the ones who can be a bit more penetrating and getting, working together to get the ball in scoring positions. The team that addresses those three things better, I think, could come out on top. And then you'll have the Sam McCartan factor. More than likely, Paul mentioned that Ronan Wallace gives Multi a different dynamism. If Sam McCartan comes in here to send Lomans, he'll give them that extra lift as well. Damien, Terrace Pass and Carson Kinnegad. Now, Terrace Pass to me pulled the result of the round in the last game. Like, I know on this podcast we didn't give them any chance. But I tell you, it's one thing we should be learning on this is you never write off Terrace Pass. No,
and in fairness to them, what a performance to come out and to topple Athlone, who had produced a great performance early on to get a draw with St. Loman's and probably should have won that match, recovered well, won their second round and looked to be building very, very nicely. Whereas Terrace Pass had suffered heavy defeats, and yet, they played with spirit. The Westmeath player Nigel Hart got a terrific goal in that match. Unfortunately for Terrace Pass,
he got seriously injured.
He got injured, so that's a blow. And they're facing Kinnegad. It's a different challenge now, but certainly they're going in with their tails up.
Yeah, I think Nigel now suffered a fairly serious knee injury.
Yeah.
So look at everyone here on the Iarmhi TV podcast. We hate to see injuries. We hate the dreaded ACL. It seems to be the word that I'm hearing. So Nigel, if it is, you know, recover well and look forward to seeing you back sooner rather than later. This game is also going to come up. They're going to come up this day against a different Coruscant Kinnegad team. You know, we questioned them probably how Jack would acclimatise to the new rules. We didn't get many answers in the open 2 games, but I thought on the last game against Shamrocks, they really looked like a team that can, you know, get that scoreboard ticking and put on a big score, and they did that the last day.
Yeah, they definitely, you know, I mean, from a forward point of view, like, they're going to be brimming with confidence. You could see it oozing out of them for the last 10 minutes, like everyone wanted to score. And to be fair to them, they didn't take on stupid attempts or anything like that. They kept kind of plugging away with the game plan and finding those pockets of space. And I think, you know, they'll go into the game with a massive amount of momentum. Like, a win like that for Kinnegad, it would give their confidence an awful jump start. But in saying that, win over Thurles Pass over Athlone will do wonders for them in terms of that sense. And I think, you know, you would say probably, you know, would Kinnegad be favourites for maybe because of the score they ran up. They might just have a little bit more firepower for Thurles Pass, but you know, like, the interesting thing about this group is anyone can still get into the top 4.
Yeah, very much so.
You know, so it's all play for, like, I mean, this is a serious game for them all.
Yeah, and I think looking at that table, Paul, I don't think even defeat this weekend for any of the teams is going to knock anyone out. It'll still be all to play for in the final game. Yeah. The last game, Damien, Downs and Athlone. Now, if we were giving away titles up to the end of the month of August, we'd probably crown the Downs as county champions, but you know, they'll know out there that no championship was ever won at this stage. But they looked impressive. Athlone now will be on the rebound. They'll be hoping to get back on the wagon and get 2 points in this one. But game out in Rochester Bridge on Sunday at 3 o'clock has the makings of a cracker as well here.
Yeah, and there wasn't much between these two sides last year.
That's right.
When they met. So, you know, Athlone, certainly, it's not as if they'll go into this game fearing the Downs or anything like that, but they do have to recover from a defeat that wasn't expected. Perhaps there are learnings, there will be learnings. Owen Jordan will reflect and see exactly what went wrong. They scored 15 points in that game against Thurles Pass. Maybe he'll look to address that, because 15 points at this level, perhaps, you know, is it going to be enough to beat the Downs, you would ask. But the Downs are flying. So well balanced. And they have the firepower up front as well, with Luke Loughlin leading the way. To me, it's a huge task for Athlone, this.
Yeah, Athlone manager Owen Jordan joined us here on the last podcast, Paul. He was brave enough to come in and say it. Now, we didn't question him in regards to that game, but I'd say he would have been disappointed to get turned over, because if they had got the 2 points that day, they would have put themselves into a probably prime position to make a semi-final.
Yeah, I mean, based on the results in the earlier rounds, you know, there would have been, I'm sure, a certain level. Nothing's ever guaranteed, but they probably would have had an expectation of getting something out of that game. So that's going to hurt for them, and it does really come down to no more than, you know, Shamrocks and Lomans, how well you recover and how you kind of what work-ons that you get out of those games, and then kind of look and see, well, where the opportunity is going to come. I'd agree with Damien, like, you got to be scoring a lot more than 15 points to beat the Downs at the moment. They're very, very strong at the back. Joe Moran and Kieran Nolan, you know, were 2 standouts for me in that game against Lomans, just in terms of not just their going forward ability, but in terms of how they cover spaces at the back. And you know, I mean, you know, obviously Luke is a standout player in terms of his scoring rate and so on. But you know, I think Ian Martin, the way he was able to pick little passes and drift into little pockets of space, and you know, there was real cohesiveness and patterns of play in terms of how the Downs were playing. You could see they'd done a lot of work on their attacking, in terms of, you know, none of those all those scores were created. They didn't just happen. There was real method in terms of what they did. So, you know, it's going to be a big task for Athlone to kind of, from a defensive point of view, to really kind of analyse what the Downs were doing there and see what they can come up with in terms of stopping them.
What I was most impressed about with the Downs, Damien, is when we got the team sheet in Mullingar that day and we looked at their substitutes. Last time we had, you know, Johnny Lynham was only down as a sub. Niall Mitchell didn't start. Conor Coughlin didn't start. You know, I think they brought on another sub.
They brought on Charlie Drum.
Charlie Drum, that's the one. You know what I mean? There's a huge panel there. Like Dermot Power would be delighted with how things are going, but you know, no more than Alan Mangan out in Castleton, Dermot will know that no titles given out yet, and you know they're setting themselves up nicely, all right. But you know the pressure will come on them, so it's interesting to see how it does pan out for them.
Yeah, and they'll want to kick on now. They'll want to keep this going, because that's how you win titles. You top the group, you get into your semi-final, you let the others trash it out then in the quarter-final, and you take them on from there. That's what the good teams, the standout teams have done. St. Loman's have won a lot of titles doing exactly that and going exactly that route. So the Downs, you know, they will have no intention of letting up or easing off. And they'll look back on last year as well, when Athlone pushed them very close. I'm not sure what was in that game when they played Athlone in the quarter-final. Very little in that game. It was a tight affair. So they will have learned from that. They look to just have carried things forward really well this year, the Downs.
There was one interesting thing, if I just kind of indulge me on the sports psychology piece, in that the Downs game against Loman. So the Downs had a free in the first half, and the referee blew it up because I think it was Luke took an extra yard beyond the mark, where there was no foam, but they took an extra yard and the ball was thrown up, and Downs won the ball, 2 passes, bang, ended up as a goal. And the thing that was in my head was, from a Loman's point of view, you know, it was a good decision to get, because it was a guaranteed point. Now it's a throw-in. Did they switch on and think we're going to win it and go on the attack and just kind of think about moving forward, and then the ball was turned over and the Downs got in for a goal, and just Lomans were really, really open at that stage. Like, I just thought it was, I was standing on the terrace, and there was a lot of upset Downs fans behind me for the first decision, and they suddenly changed their tune like they were after winning the lotto for the second, for when it ended up in the back of the net afterwards. It was good. It was a good moment. Yeah, the referee kind of the opinion of the referee flipped in the space of about 60 seconds. It was fantastic.
Before we go on to our predictions, and just looking at the format for the fixtures coming up, and round 4 is this weekend, which is the 6th of September. There's a fortnight then for round 5, which is the weekend of the 20th of September. But the quarter-finals then come up the following week. So when the group game finishes, the 4 teams in the quarter-final only have 1 week to prepare. So, you know, to get to your point,
yes,
the top 2 teams here are going to get themselves a little bit of a break, which at that stage of the year, with the grounds, you know, starting to get heavier weather changing, that could be crucial to it as well.
Yeah. And that extra week, because you're coming out of a seriously competitive championship, 5 rounds, and suddenly you get to round 5. Maybe you have to push really hard to make a quarter final, and then suddenly, Paul spoke about recovery. Most of these guys have to go to work on the Monday morning, I assume. They can't clock out for a day and go off to the Mullingar Park Hotel or Bloomfield for a swim, a recovery session. I don't think they have that luxury. So yeah, how they recover and the short time frame, that will be a factor.
I would definitely have, like, if I was looking at that, the first thing that came into my head is, please play that last round of games on a Saturday.
Yeah.
It gives one, and then the quarterfinals on a Sunday. It gives you 1 extra day of recovery. If you're managing a team, that'd be like a godsend.
Yeah. Right, boys. There's managers out there now, and they're all waiting for the predictions. Of pin it up on the wall or send it around into the team WhatsApp group saying these clowns inside the Iarmhi TV, what do they know about it, and they're predicting we won't win this, that, and the other. As I can tell you, boys, I got after the last round of games. So we're brave enough here. You put your necks on the line. We'll go from where we finished. We'll start with the opening game in the Senior A Section A this weekend. The Downs and Athlone. Damien, I'll go to you first.
The Downs for me. I think that they're further advanced and they have more match winners. They're better balanced. So for me, the Downs to come through this one.
Paul?
I mean, I find it hard to not pick the Downs.
Okay. Thirds past Kinnegad. Interesting one this now. Damien?
For me, it's Carlstown Kinnegad. I think, again, they're a team that, the first couple of rounds didn't go very well for them, but they had faced very serious opposition in those first two games. They got that out of the system. I think they recovered really well. They produced a good performance the last day, scoring 3-20. Despite Terrell's passes, great win and all the rest. I think they're going into this game without Nigel Hart. That's a big blow to them. I would go for Carlstown Kinnegad win.
Paul?
Yeah, I'd agree with everything Damien said there. I think Kinnegad just have that bit more momentum behind them. I think losing Nigel Hart, even though they handled it really well during the game and dealt with that disappointment, I think he's a marquee player for them. I think they might struggle a little bit without him.
And Paul, I won't go to you on this one, but Damien said Loman's among our Shamrocks.
Yeah, well, look, for me, St. Loman's are ahead here, but probably not by as much as you would have thought at the start of the campaign. It's now a little bit closer. The Sam McCartan situation, whether he's back or not, that's a factor. He's a key man for St. Loman's. If they're going into that game without him, and I'm not sure what the situation is around his injury or whatnot, it's an obvious blow. They're already down Ronan O'Toole. They're two massive players, even though St. Loman's have developed a very, very strong squad. They have all the experience. They've been in 10 county finals, all of that. It's a test for them, but I think it's one they're capable of passing.
Okay.
But a right good derby match, I think, to look forward to.
Hopefully so. Yeah. Hopefully so. I'll be on commentary for that one, so hopefully we'll get that. Section B, Garrycastle and Colliery. Paul?
I'm going to go draw.
Oh, sitting on the fence.
No, draw. I hope it'll be 9-1. Could be a good bet. Sports
psychology might know something about it. Right, Damien?
I'm going to go for Garrycastle here. They played very well the last day. Colliery probably not going as well as they would have expected, but I think if there's a game to bring a performance out of them, it's surely this one. They won't want to lose here for lots of reasons. I just think Garrycastle have a little bit of an edge maybe, and they might squeeze through, but would I be shocked if Colliery turned them over? I wouldn't. With Senan Baker back now, I think he's an explosive talent. So a tight affair maybe, Garrycastle just to squeeze through.
Moorhall Whites and Malachy's. Paul.
I think there's a kick in Malachy, so I'm just going to go with them, based on nothing really other than a hunch.
Right, Damien.
Close one.
You tipped Malachy's in the last round, just to remind you.
That's true.
Tom Brown didn't thank you for it.
Yeah, but of course they were playing entirely different opposition, and round 4 now it's moving round. Motorhall White's coming in with a bit of momentum, so you'd probably give them the edge here to squeeze through, but not by much. I think it's a very, very close, interesting match.
And then the last game in Section B, the senior, Tang and Killucan. Again, two teams coming in off the back of defeats in the last round. Paul?
I think Colligan are a quality team. I think they'll find their mojo.
Damien?
Yeah, probably not the most difficult game to call, I'd say, this one. I would agree. I'd say Colligan have the edge here, especially with Tang being depleted and having lost the games so far, the 3 matches so far. I think they're going to get it very, very difficult to turn Colligan over here.
Right, moving into the intermediate, Section A, Shandona and St Mary's. Paul?
Shandona.
Okay. Damien?
St Mary's played well for stretches against Rosemount, but they left themselves too much to do, and the game was kind of gone from them by the time they started to play. If that happens again, Shandona will cruise and they'll win handsomely. Now, I would expect Shandona to win here anyway, because I think they're the better balanced side, and they have a little bit more momentum behind them.
Second game in that section, Tubberclair and Multifarnham. Again, two teams coming in off the back of a defeat in the last game.
Is Rona Wallace back?
Not sure. I think so. I'm not sure. Though.
If Rona Wallace is back, I fancy there'll be a reaction from Multi. But I don't know. Tubberclair, you'd have to say, they were pretty up there kind of early on in the championship, but if Ronan Wallace is back, I'd fancy Multi there.
Damien? And the Ronan Wallace factor is going to be huge.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to say Tubberclair here. Okay, Ronan Wallace is a class player, no doubt about it, but I just didn't see enough from Multifarnham the last day. Now, whether heads dropped or not, or whether they just accepted their fate very early in that match, I don't know, I'm not sure. I think if they can turn things around, and especially, I think if they can turn things around, it's going to be remarkable, even if Ronan Wallace is back. But especially against Tubberclair, who have lost now, so they're going to have gone back, refocused, and they're going to come into this game, I think, with a different attitude and a different approach. So I would give Tubberclair the edge in that one.
And the last game in the section A, Rosemount Milltown. Paul?
Can I go for a draw?
All right, sit on the fence again there, no problem. We just won't bring you back again. That's all. Rosemount.
I'd find it hard to call. Yeah, I can make arguments for both of them to win.
Yeah, fair enough. You're going to get the bookies as well. You give me a copy of that document.
That's a double.
Already, yeah.
That's a double.
Damien, Rosemount, Milltown.
I'm going to say Milltown on the basis that they played so well the last day, having not performed to their best, but having failed to win maybe games that they should have before that. They didn't let it get to them, which is probably a good sign. And I think they probably have more scoring options than Rosemount, and that might be just the factor.
Okay. Section B, the big game in Section B in Intermediate Championship this weekend, Saturday evening, the Downs, Milltown Pass and Castledaly. Paul?
I'd go Milltown Pass.
Okay.
I just think that they've a bit more scoring threat. I think it'll be a close game. I don't think it'll be kind of one-way traffic or anything like that, anything remotely like that. I just think Milltown Pass just have a bit more in the tank.
Yeah, an interesting test, I think, this one for Milltown Pass. Maybe the danger for Milltown Pass is that, people will build them up now, and maybe they didn't have the test in the last round. I'm always concerned about a team who wins in an effortless manner, and that's what Milltown Pass did the last day. Okay, there's real quality there, but they have to control that too. I'd fancy them to sneak this, but would I be shocked if Castledaly turned them over? I wouldn't be entirely shocked, but you would give Milltown Pass the edge based on the scoring power that they have.
Yeah, up front, right. Yeah. Then the other two games in that group, Maryland, Kilbeggan, again important in its own reasons, and both of them coming off defeats again in the last round. So, again, these games are, you know, impossible to call. It's toss a coin or whatever.
I haven't seen either team play, so I like. Can I have a hall pass on that one?
All right, we'll give you a pass on that one. Damien, we've seen Kilbeggan, and I don't know whether you've seen Maryland, but I've seen Kilbeggan, and, you know, Milton Pass very, very much tore them asunder, but they're proud, and they'll regroup, and knowing that this is nearly a 4-pointer, this game for them.
Yeah, I would say this is a very, very tight one. Maryland's the edge in experience, undoubtedly. Kilbeggan have to bounce back, but their pride is hurt. Everything is hurt. They're going to be questioning all sorts of questions after the last game, and they didn't score enough either. Like, if you're beaten and you score 15 or 16 points, grand, but they put up such a low scoring total the last day that's a concern.
Right.
Maryland didn't finish the game the last day against Ballymore, that will worry them, but maybe just Maryland to squeeze through here.
And the last game in the intermediate, Castlefine Cool Whitehall against Ballymore. This one on the Sunday evening, Shandona at 3 o'clock. It's another 4-pointer, really, this one, isn't it? Paul, how do you see it?
Yeah, I'm literally, I'd pick Ballymore just from the point of view of they're just might be that little bit ahead in terms of to have a win. They're coming off the back of a win in a local derby. There's a good bit of positivity around, you know, hurling out there as well, and that just might give them enough to kind of carry them over the line. But in saying that, Cool Whitehall, their backs are to the wall now, and you might see something from them in terms of, you know, it's kind of this is the day where they have to produce now, or else it's kind of pretty much gone from them. So, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if that was a real tight affair.
Damien?
Yeah, I think it's a close match, and I would expect Castlefine to be, you know, right there at the end. There's not going to be much in it. Ballymore, on the basis that, you know, they had that kick in them to come back into the game the last day, they'll fancy their chances. It's a very, very interesting close match to call. Castlefine just haven't been playing consistently well enough, I suppose, and maybe on that basis you'd go for Ballymore to squeeze through.
Yeah, and you know, there's a change in the weather. Conditions are going to change now this weekend. For that, you know, the last game was, you know, almost summer weather. We're gone now to autumn, winter weather. So you know, anything can happen with new rules, slip and slide, and whatever else. Anyway, junior championship. I'm not sure, Damon, if we have enough on any of the games to see the fixtures in section B. Of course, the big group. Ballycarrigy, Ballycamoyle. I would imagine Ballycarrigy will be hoping to get back on the wagon here with Ballycamoyle's form. The other two games, St Joseph's against Moathall Whites. St Joseph's would expect it.
Yeah, you would
expect it. Huh?
Yeah, and then big game, the last game, Bunbrusna and Ballynagore.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because it's going to be interesting to see how close Bunbrusna can get to Ballynagore. To be honest, I don't think they can beat them, but it's going to be very, very interesting to see how close that game is. St Joseph's taking on Moathall Whites. Moathall Whites looked impressive, and they have a nice crop of young players, and they put up some good scores in their recent games. So that might be an interesting match, but you would expect St Joseph's to come through there as well.
Just run through for our listeners the fixtures for the weekend. In the senior section A, the Downs and Athlone is on Sunday in Rochford at 3 o'clock. Thurles Pass vs Corus and Kinnegad, first of a double header in TG Cusick Park at 4:15 on Sunday, and that's followed by St Loman's and Mullingar Shamrocks at 6 o'clock. Both those games live on Iarmhi TV. Section B, Garrycastle vs Colliery is on Saturday in TG Cusick Park at 4:30, followed by Moathall Whites and St Malachy's at 6:15. Again, both those games live on Iarmhi TV. The other game in that group is Tang vs Killucan on Sunday in Rochford at 1:30. Intermediate section A, Shandona vs St Mary's on Saturday in Kinnegad at 5. followed by Rosemount and Milltown in Kinnegad at 6:30, and the other game, Tubberclair and Multifarnham in Ballinaccarrigy, 6:15 on the Saturday. And Section B, Milltown Pass versus Castle Daly, Saturday in the Downs at 5 o'clock, followed by Maryland and Kilbeggan in the Downs at 6:30, and the last game in that group, Castletownfenay, Cool Whitehall and Ballymore on Sunday in Shandona at 3 o'clock. Junior Section 1, Mullingar, Shamrocks, Coruscant, Kinnegads on Friday night in Springfield, the Downs versus Athlone, Friday night in Athlone. Section B, Ballinaccarrigy versus Ballycamoyle, Sunday 1:30 in Shandona, and then a double header in Castown, St Joseph versus Mold All Whites at 1:30, and Bunbruston versus Ballynagore again in Castown at 3 p.m. Just on another little thing, I just want to throw get your opinion on it, lads. Last night, Damien, we were in Cusick Park for a game that threw in at 6 o'clock, and the weather is going back. Is there an option now to bring some of these games maybe back earlier with the way the weather has changed in dark evenings? Can you see that happen as we, even maybe before the weekend happens, that there could be a change in these fixtures, or is that not going to happen at this stage?
Yeah, I mean 6:30. Yeah, you would be probably a little bit. No, it should be okay. It should be okay, but as you say, dull evenings and everything else. But it's always more challenging for the hurling. You would say,
ball.
Yeah.
Small ball. And I have one question before we finish up. I'm just going to throw this at the two. Jim Gavin, our president-elect for the country, they're looking on the FRC and bringing in a new rule a la basketball, where the team, once you go into the opposite half of the field, you can come back. In favour or not in favour?
I'm just relieved you weren't asking me about whether I thought Jim Gavin would be a good president or not. To be honest, I wouldn't. And for the simple reason is that, if you think about it from an attacking sense, you've 3 players back, so you have 12 attacking players, maybe 11 with keeper, right? So in an attacking half, and then you have another 12 defending. And if you don't have the option to go back out and get out and around and try and create space, I think it could get very, very compressed. I think it would be good in one way. You might see a lot of turnovers, but I think from an attacking point of view, it gets very, very, very tight. And I think, what I'm enjoying about the game at the moment is it's quite free flowing. Yeah, it's still got little elements of, a lot of defenders and so on, but there's that much more space to pick it. I think if you can't go back out and use another opportunity to create a space, I think it just gets very, very tight, very, very quickly.
Would it lead to, on the transition, that teams would attack quicker, get the ball up front quicker?
Yeah, and the have, in fairness, the changes have been good in that regard. I mean, the solo and go, for example, that really leads to a fast transition now. I suppose you can see from an FRC point of view, they're looking at this and saying, how can we take things to the next level? Now, you have to be careful too that you don't push it too far, that you don't, maybe it's only year one, maybe just give it some more time. I wouldn't be a fan of players passing the ball, or players kicking the ball back especially. You see from a sideline, players kicking the ball back, or a free players kicking the ball back. I'd be looking at that. But whether or not that would work, that you can't, pass the ball back once you go into the opposition half, I'm not sure.
I know this would be impossible to introduce, but I would like to see it for the last 5 minutes of a game. Or the last 5 minutes of each half. I think with now not so much in club matches, but with the Hoosier, you're definitely, you can see it in a lot of the inter-county games. Teams are managing the clock and then going back and going over and back and pulling out the other team from that point of view. And I think that kills the opportunity for an exciting finish to a game if a game is tight. So yeah, that's the only that's when I go, last 5 minutes, lads, you can't kick it backwards, you have to keep attacking.
Right, look, it's only something that's been talked about. Reece, when it's come up. Look, lads, I think we're done here for tonight. We hope the viewers enjoyed it. We hope all the managers know and all the players that were looking on, don't know who was tonight, but we've given you something for your team talk this weekend. Paula Hearn, sports psychologist, thank you very much for joining us. Damien, as always, sports editor in the Westmeath Examiner, your opinion always valued, your knowledge as well. We won't get any of them right, we might get none of them right, we might get some of them right, but who knows? Get out and watch the games of the weekend. 4 of them live on Iarmhi TV if you can't, or if you're out of the country. €15 I think it is for the double header both evenings, great value. Buy the season pass if you're really into the games and you're out of the country. From myself, Ray Gavin. Tom Brown is on director, Jerry Gavin is on the cameras over there, and we're looking out through the lights at the two of them. Thanks very much for joining us out there, lads, and we'll see you next week.